Pico sure teased us recently. If you don't know who Pico is, Pico makes standalone VR headsets similar to the Quest 2 and actually at competitive pricing with the Quest 2. The problem is right now they have only launched in Asia and parts of Europe. We've been hoping for a long time they'd come to the US and actually give us a Quest competitor, and then recently they tweeted something that said, "A new journey begins. Save the date, the 22nd of March 2023. A lot of people were speculating because this was during GDC. Pico actually got a huge booth at GDC here in America that this meant they were finally going to launch in the US. Well, the date came and went. No big announcement. Nothing happened. Now what people are saying most likely happened as a result of this is that they had to delay the headset due to these congressional hearings because Pico is owned by TikTok company's owner, ByteDance. And if you've heard about that, the whole TikTok ban, everything going on in the US, that is likely what happened if they were planning on announcing the headset. This is unfortunate because we actually have been in talks with Pico even to get one of their headsets to show you more content from it, review it, check it out, and it seems like everything is going to kind of be held off till they find out what exactly is going on here. So speaking of that, what is going on in your opinion? Do you think there's any chance TikTok is going to get banned? I'd love to hear in the comments what you're thinking and why. Some interesting details came out from Capcom in a Q&A that's coming out this weekend about Resident Evil 8's VR mode on PSVR 2. Now, although they couldn't give exact numbers when they asked how successful it's been, they said a large majority of PSVR 2 owners have played Resident Evil Village in VR. Of course, they can't give out the exact numbers because Sony hasn't given out any sales numbers on the PSVR 2 yet, but interestingly, even though a large majority of PSVR 2 owners have tried Resident Evil Village or Resident Evil 8, they said that at this time, they have no plans of bringing the Resident Evil Village DLC or the Mercenaries mode to PSVR 2. Now, of course, they are saying at this time, and we've seen before, like with Resident Evil 4 on the Quest 2, additional modes did come to VR later on. I would guess most of Capcom's VR team right now is working on whatever VR content we're getting for Resident Evil 4, but I found it interesting that they said it's a large majority, and yet there's nothing in the works yet. Of course, if you're like me, you're waiting on any sort of news of what's happening with Resident Evil 4's VR mode and how much of the game that is going to be. As someone who's personally tried it so far, it's still one of the best and most engaging games to play on the PSVR 2, so I would love to see some more content coming down the road, but I'm really holding out waiting for Resident Evil 4. What do you think? Are we going to get the whole game, the whole campaign on Resident Evil 4 in the updated version? I hope so. VRChat remains one of VR's most popular social experiences, not only because it's available on a lot of VR headsets, it's also been available flat on PC for years, so people who saw videos of it online, didn't have a headset yet, could go still experience a version of it flat. With all of the success, they're now going to make mobile versions of VRChat, with it coming first to Android and of course Apple later on. Actually looks pretty promising. They've shared some videos of some early builds. You get that very familiar menu music as you're opening up VRChat, and then the movement styles in it, the graphics on phone, I've got to say so far look pretty good. Now they are saying this could come in as early as a few months, at least the beta build, but only VRChat Plus subscribers are going to get access to that to help them polish it up and get it ready for a full-on launch. The full public build then should release, they're saying, within 3 to 6 months after the beta release on the Google Play Store. It'll take longer, of course, on iOS because they say the platform is different, it uses a different graphics framework, and they're going to have to rebuild it just for iOS. We actually saw Rec Room do the same thing years ago now, launching on iOS and Android, and although I don't personally ever play Rec Room that way, it's interesting because you can take it on the go, as we've seen here in some of the shots of VRChat, people checking it out when they're at the airport. What do you think? Would you ever try VRChat on your phone? If you watch a lot of VR YouTubers, you've probably seen Bigscreen Beyond, that tiny little new VR headset from the makers of Bigscreen. The VR digital theater app is finally hitting some reviewers, and they're taking it out and showing you more about it. This headset's making a big splash because it is so small, such a tiny form factor, but they also are importantly having you 3D scan your face and making a custom fitted facial interface exactly to your face. Now, we've talked about this headset before in the news, but it's $1,000, pancake lenses, super tiny, and it is meant to work in the Steam VR ecosystem. So this could be something that you could replace your index with, but still use your index controllers, your Vive controllers, something like that with it. Interestingly, in talking about the face pad, they're saying how important this is to get that custom fitted face pad because they're also using that to align people's eyes just right with the lenses, meaning that it's not like other VR headsets where you really have to struggle to find that sweet spot. This thing will be built for your face. And that custom face pad just slips in with magnets on there, giving you the option, if you have a couple different people using the headset, you could potentially order extra face pads for each person. Each person has their own face pad. You're not sharing your sweaty face pad. It's fitting each person perfectly. And I can tell you, I actually got to get my hands on one of these when I was down in Orlando. Bradley from the channel, sadly it's Bradley, had brought his for people to just kind of see hands on. We weren't able to turn it on there, but holding this thing, it is incredible how small small it is and how light it is. Talking to Bradley about it, he also said that even beyond how much he normally spends time in VR, with this, spending even more time because it's just so easy. The screens, he said, look really good. And I'm really excited to see what's coming with this headset and the future of more headsets like this that have even smaller form factors maybe down the road. Of course, this isn't something for people who want a completely standalone experience, but for people who have been stuck with the Index for years now, who are wanting something with maybe a smaller form factor, a bit lighter, something they can really relax in, this is promising for $1,000. Of course, it doesn't have that onboard audio that a lot of people are used to with the Index too, so that is one thing people are saying is kind of holding it back. They would love to see, but they are offering a $100 audio strap they are designing for this down the road. What do you think? At this point in the game, are you interested in a wired headset if it's this tiny and this easy to just get in and out of? If you've been following the journey of PSVR 2, you probably have heard about a Bloomberg article that recently came out and made quite a splash in the industry. Bloomberg reported that the PSVR 2 is not doing well and that it's way under projection of sales, and they've got some estimates of numbers saying that it is selling about 270,000 units so far since its launch in late February to the end of March. This, of course, scaring some people off buying the headset, thinking that it's not getting the sales it was looking for when they believed that Sony thought they would sell 2 million of these. If you can't tell from this, there is a lot going around about whether this is legitimate or not, how Bloomberg had reported on things before that Sony later said wasn't really correct or wasn't the situation. But to put some things in perspective here about these numbers, PSVR 1 was considered a success as it sold over 5 million units total. It took them about 8 months to hit 1 million units. For 270,000 in basically its first month of life, when it's only been available through the Sony website here in America, we can't even go to Best Buy and get it. Now, the original article was making this number sound very low, but a couple things that people have said since then to help put this into perspective. It was at 5 months that they had sold around 915,000 of the original PSVR. At that time, there was a huge user base of people who had already owned a PS4, had one for a long time, and were available. Where now, although there's about 30 million PS5 owners and more each day as they're finally becoming more available, it's still nothing like the amount of PS4s that were available at the time. People are citing that, well, the price was too high, it's more than the PS5. But Ben Lang from Road to VR actually pointed out on Twitter that if you take inflation into account, the PSVR 2 is actually less expensive than the PSVR 1 was at the time. PSVR 1 cost more than the PS4 did at the time too. So for those of you out there who saw these kind of alarmist headlines and this news of estimates about the PSVR 2, what do you think? Do you think that number is actually something Sony can look forward to and say this has been a decent launch for it being a soft launch so far? Or do you think that's way too low and developers are going to get scared off and head, of course, over to the Quest, which has now sold almost 20 million units? I'd love to know in the comments how you feel about that, especially as I can say personally, I've been having a good time with my PSVR 2, but I don't know a ton of people who also own one yet. Do you play Dungeons and Dragons every Sunday with your family? Is it something that you feel like they're way more into than you are, but you're there for the social time, for the family hangout, and you just kind of painstakingly make your way through it? It might be about to become a lot more exciting for those of you who don't get pulled into the game like other people. There is a new AR app in development that would let you actually see the world of Dungeons and Dragons in front of you on the table. This app looks really interesting and really promising because everyone can actually now see the world in front of them instead of just having to imagine it or have a really good dungeon master who's really weaving that tale to make it interesting. Although I wonder, for those of you out there who have played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, do you feel like seeing the world could actually take away some of the magic or limit it? It's something that's interesting to me, but I know personally I play a lot of Demio and people say it's kind of like an easier version of Dungeons and Dragons in VR, and I absolutely love Demio. So with all of that going on in the news, we're back from all of our trips from GDC, from Orlando. We're back here for you hanging out again. I just want to say another thank you. It's been an amazing time getting to go see and travel and meet all these other people in the VR community. But it's also nice to be home again and have a little bit of time to get back to hanging out with all of you and making more videos for you. So in the comments, let me know, how are you enjoying the news, the games, the reviews? What else do you want to see from the channel as we move forward in the future? I'd love to know, but I want to say thank you for coming back again and again, hanging out with us here. And I will see you in another reality.